Okay, and welcome back to our conversation on happiness with Rhonda Hull and Laura Lavigne. And I'd like to loop back to something that I read a few minutes ago with regard to whatever or whoever we think makes us happy can also piss us off, and how that relates to happiness. And in listening to both of you over the last few minutes, I think where that came from and what I'm hearing you guys say is that, and it's my firm belief that we're all delusional. We live in it. We've been indoctrinated from the time that we came onto this planet to believe things that we were told about ourselves and about the world that aren't necessarily the truth. And so out of that, as we get older, like you both have said, we chase happiness. But I think that we have to get away and like move aside all of that illusion and delusion and confusion that has been piled on us. And when we do, and we start seeing things from a different perspective and start living from a different perspective, that all of a sudden happiness has a different meaning in a different context than what we think happiness should be. I mean, so I'd like to have you guys speak more about that and what your opinion on it is on that.
Yeah, I think a word that pops up all of the time is, because of that indoctrination, is what I think. The power of our thoughts is huge. And, you know, like I mentioned, I've worked in the field from womb to tomb, from standing at the window of the nursery. Now, most of the time, babies are with their moms right after they're born. But I can remember those moments of standing at midnight, looking into the window of the nursery and seeing all of the different babies lined up and having those deep thoughts of, well, gee, that one weighs 5 pounds, that one weighs 13 pounds. Perhaps that one is going to grow up believing that they're beautiful, and that one's going to grow up believing they're stupid, and yet they're all magnificent, whether they have all 10 fingers and toes or not. And it's all of those labels or beliefs or thoughts that get projected that take us further and further away from the truth. So it is, you know, it's my ongoing quest, you know, if that is part of the path, is that quest that we often think that it's a quest out there, but it's really a quest within to reconnect, to, you know, to like Laura talks about, uncovering or letting go of the misbeliefs about who we are and live it from that place of, I am the spark of the divine. And I may not understand it all, but if I can live it from that place, it influences how my day goes.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Rhonda nailed it there. It's that uncovering again, like getting past the labels. I remember being in, I think I was 7 years old and in dance class, and my mother and my grandmother, I think we did a performance, and I could hear them laughing through the performance, and afterwards coming to me and saying, honey, you're not a dancer. And it crushed me because I thought I was such a great dancer. Right. And I loved the whole thing. And it took maybe 30 years for me to get back to dancing again. And, you know, I can dance, I can move just fine. But that's one little thing. How many things are labeled on top of us that we've taken in? So again, to me, it's a matter of uncovering. Yeah. What hurts, what snags, what binds, what is not lined up with your essence. Let's get rid of it. Let's question it. Questioning things.
Right.
You know, questioning. Like, you're a terrible dancer. Is it true? Byron Katie does wonderful work with that questioning, the inquiry. Is it true? We don't question. We we take these agreements and we live from them, and they can be so painful and so life shrinking, but we don't take the time to ask whether they're true or not.
Right.
Questioning. I have little cards that I print out and I give out. It says, is it true? I just hand them out.
Right. Yeah, I love Byron and Katie's work because of the 4 questions. Is it true? How can you really be certain that it's true? Who are you when you believe it's true? And this is it. Who would you be if you believed that it wasn't true? Like, who would you show up as if you believed that you were magnificent? So just practice being that every day.
Or if you didn't believe that you were lousy.
Right. Yeah. And I love the phrase, what you think of me is none of my business. And yet the perplexity of that is that oftentimes when people bring something really challenging into our lives, it's also, to me, the opportunity to say, oh, there's a gift, there's a truth buried in here somewhere. You know, that whole questioning of like, what in this is true for me? Where in this hurt, or when that person is being angry or upset, what is the truth in this where there's something for me to learn? So I don't have to take it on as true, but it opens the door for me to question it so that I can receive the gift from even the really messy exchange or the less than perfect demonstration of love.
And do you guys think that sometimes we get locked into behaviors that other people expect of us? So instead of choosing to be happy, you know, even in the face of other circumstances, that we default to what other people's expectations are of our reaction to things?
Oh, yeah. People like to commiserate.
Misery loves company and all that.
You think your day was bad? Well, wait until you hear mine. You know, it's like a one-upsman. So it is, again, it's that choice or that awareness or consciousness to bring it back to not judge them for wanting to have a pity party, but to use that as the reminder to bring yourself back to center.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm thinking too, like Laura, you know, that experience with your mother and your grandmother could easily have started an expectation of you that everything that you do is met with that kind of judgment. And then you begin to believe that, and it begins a pattern and so on through. It can affect your whole entire life because one person or one, you know, set of people made a comment. And I wonder.
And the same is true for there's the antidote to that. So, you know, I lived years and years thinking I was a klutz. No grace is the word. You have no grace. And then I found myself on a set. I used to work for the movies and the fashion industry in Seattle in the 80s. And, you know, I'm moving around, moving the lights, I was a makeup artist, moving stuff. And the photographer comes to me and says, I want to tell you something. And she says, you have an amazing studio grace. Oh. And I said, what's studio grace? She says, you move around that studio with such grace. You never trip on the wire. I just wanted to say that to you. Bam. Done. And I think that's when I started dancing again.
Yeah.
So that to me goes back to this thing that's super dear to my heart. And I actually just wrote a book about it and I don't have it with me. It's coming out next week called You Sprinkle Happiness, which means that as we leave our home every day, we have the power to alter people. We don't have to be rich. We don't have to have a degree. We don't have to have any skills. We are so powerful, all of us, little guys, big guys, old people, young people, fat people, skinny people. We can alter each other so profoundly, and we get to choose what comes out of our mouth. So for this lady to take the time to say, you have really a lot of studio grace, she didn't have to do that. It transformed for me. Years later, I was taking an art class, and the art teacher came to me and said, this is beautiful. And right away, I changed my major, and I became an artist. And this painting there is mine. I showed in Seattle. I hate to be so influenceable that it took her saying that. But if that's the case, let's use the word to lift each other up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all it would have taken is for her not to say that, and I would have continued with what I was doing. She turned my life. I made a right turn, and it was 4 months before I had an exhibit in Seattle. So she had that power. It cost her nothing, just
Right.
words coming out of her mouth. We can all do this.
That's what was present for me, was it didn't cost her a dime.
Nothing.
It was just her consciousness, and she probably had no idea. So many of us, we go through our days and we think that no one noticed. We don't always get to see the evidence that we've made a difference.
That's right.
And yet it's in those simple little things that make such a huge difference. You know, when you talk about your art, Laura, I remember when I was doing my student teaching in a kindergarten classroom back when I was involved in early childhood education. And here is this master teacher. Again, that whole thing of being held as an expert, it sets this, I'm better than you. It's about seeing the equality in all of us. But in that classroom, I was studying under a master teacher. There was a little kindergartner who was painting this magnificent, his name was Sam, this magnificent purple tree. The teacher, the master teacher that I'm supposed to study under, comes and rips his page off of his easel, crumples it up, throws it in the trash, and says, Sam, don't you know that trees aren't purple? Now paint me a tree that has green leaves and a brown trunk. And it was like, note to self,
Don't do that.
never, ever do this. So it was the gift of opposites. That's another thing that I apply to my life, is looking for the gift in opposites. I could have focused all of my upset, and for a while I did, on her, and yet through her, it speaks to what Roger was saying, through her, the opposite, the anger and upset, I learned one of the most profound gifts in my life, which was to celebrate that each of us have our own way of seeing, our own way of being, our own way of doing it. We don't have to be like one another. We just have to see the love in one another.
Rhonda, I love that, the gift of opposites. What a beautiful, beautiful concept.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we're going to switch to a more spiritual concept of happiness. So we'll be right back.